Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was a story at nursery school for the 4-year-old Jane. This was the first time she had ever heard the story, so she listened carefully as the teacher told the story of a sweet young girl who was fed a poison apple by an old witch. And the predictable result: she fell into a deep sleep and would never wake up unless she received a kiss from the wonderful Prince Charming. Jane couldn't wait to get home and tell the story to her mother. At home, Jane said, "Mother, let me tell you a story. You'll never believe it." She began to describe what happened to Snow White. She got to the end, and she said, "And Mother, Prince Charming kissed her back to life. And guess what happened?" Her mother responded, "Well, honey, they lived happily ever after." But the little girl shook her head. She replied. "No, they didn't. They got married." I didn't plan that, tell you. Happily ever after is a fairy tale ending, isn't it? Marriages are in real life, and marriage forms the foundation of a home. A strong foundation is essential for a stable house, home, or family. A lasting foundation can endure the storms of life and help hold a family together when the world is being torn apart around it. We've looked at Naomi, who did the right thing for the wrong reason last week. We looked at Orpah, who walked away from her relationship, as Deb read, to go back and look for better prospects somewhere else. Who is right? Let's look at their culture and ours first. Now, I know sometimes I get a little bit weighty, but this is something that I think you need to hear, okay? So bear with me. In Western culture, generally speaking, love is an affect of the heart, which is usually experienced individualistically toward another or other individuals. It does not necessarily involve attachment. In fact, given the strong sense of individualism that permeates this culture, attachment is not a high priority. In this culture, individuals join groups only on the basis of an implied contract. One remains with the group as long as it meets one's personal interests. When that fails, it's time to leave the group. No stronger attachment than this is established between the individual and the group. Dr. Bruce Molina explains that in his book, Biblical Social Values and Their Meaning, and he contrasts that with the culture of the time of Jesus. So let's contrast that. For the culture of Ruth was much the same as the time of Jesus, and many things are still the same way today in that part of the world. Love Israelite style. Love is the value of group attachment and group bonding. It may or may not be coupled with feelings of affection. Such group attachment and group bondings are one type of social glue that keeps groups together. Thus, to love someone is to be attached and bonded to the person. The Lord expected this kind of loyalty and commitment out of his people. Old Testament scriptures that reflect this: Joshua 22:5. Be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave to you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to keep his commandments, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Love is combined with holding fast in action and life. In our marriage vows, husbands and wives, or a husband in particular, is told to leave his father and mother and cleave or cling to his wife. This week you're going to get, if you're following your chapter day readings, we're in 1 Samuel. I hope that you're doing that. As we're going through this week you're going to get into the rise of King David. And David and Goliath, that's always a fun one to read in 1 Samuel chapter 17. So this is coming forward into the reign of David. And one of the things that happened in David's life was his friendship with Saul's son, Jonathan. Listen to these words from the scripture. And David had finished talking with Saul. After he had, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic, even his sword, his bow, and his belt. Now, why would a guy do that? I looked at some commentaries, thought about the context. Why would he do that? Because he is the first in line to be king by birth. And so what Jonathan has said to David is, I will never, ever use my position or power to harm you. In essence, he's saying that I will not use my throne in any way, because in some ways, someone like David could be a threat. Could be a threat to his throne. I mean, all of Israel shouted and cried out his name when he defeated that giant. He could be viewed as a potential threat. At the end of Jonathan's life, there's a lament that David says, How the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on the heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. Now, one commentary, I wanted to look at that, and it makes this very clear. David is not suggesting that marital love is inferior to that of friendship, nor do his remarks have sexual implications. He is simply calling attention to Jonathan's nearly inexplicable, self-denying commitment to David, whom Jonathan had long recognized as the Lord's choice to succeed or follow his father, King Saul. We find this type of attachment and loving commitment in the person of Ruth in today's story. First, Ruth had committed to Naomi and her family when she got married in the first place and entered into that family. She acted selflessly, and put the welfare of her family ahead of her own personal or individual needs. Second, she doubled down on her commitment to family. And to do so was costly. It cost her her future in Moab, her familiarity with her place of origin. What did she know about Israel? Her family and friends from Moab, and the God she had been taught and raised to worship in her childhood. It cost her a lot to do what she did. Second, it was costly, it was long-term in its nature. A young college man wanted a photo of his girlfriend and the picture inside this picture frame to be copied. Upon removing the photo from the frame, the employee at Staples, found an inscription on the back of it. My dearest Tom, I love you with all my heart. I love you more each day. I will love you forever. I am yours for eternity. Diane. And at the bottom, there was a P.S. If we ever break up, I want this picture back. Ruth had none of these sentiments. Bury me where you are buried. And next, it was a sacred vow unto God. May the Lord deal with me ever so harshly if I fail to do what I have promised. So to her, her commitment was complete and wholehearted in its nature. Ruth proved her commitment with convincing words. I mean, those are words that many people have recited in wedding ceremonies. Where thou goest, I will go. Where thou liest down, I shall lie. Right? Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. I mean, that is a part of many wedding ceremonies. In a culture where there is no paper to easily make records, it's not like you can go buy a ream at Staples or Walmart. It's a little cheaper there sometimes. Your spoken word is binding because people can't write things down. And when they go forth, it is a powerful thing. When you say it, others hear it, and God hears it, it becomes binding. After Isaac had blessed Jacob verbally, you'll remember he tricked Dad into getting his blessing, right? He said, I can't give you a blessing. I already gave it. Well, I didn't write it down on paper, but the point is he had spoken it. And once he said it, it couldn't be undone. So spoken words and promises were important to be kept. Ruth kept her word. Second, her actions were convincing. In verse 19, it says she went to Bethlehem and accompanied her there. And everybody's saying, can this be Naomi? And then Naomi gets into her little pity party. But the point is, she went with her. Her actions proved out this. And later in the story, we find out that she went out and worked. And she went out to do hard work and hard labor to feed not just herself, but her mother-in-law. She worked doubly hard to provide for her family. And it says in the scripture, she worked from dawn until dusk in the fields. Her commitment is why they have a book named after her. And I believe that that's why she became the great-grandmother of King David. Great character, great commitment to God and to other people. A surgeon tells a story of how he removed a cancerous tumor from a woman's face. And in the operation, he did everything he could to try and preserve the nerve that was near that tumor because he knew the consequences, and he had told the woman ahead of time, if that nerve is severed, you're going to lose control of that side of your face, and it's going to affect how you smile and all your expressions. And so after the surgery, after she come out of anesthesia and seeing it for the first time, she asked for a mirror so she could see it. And she asked the doctor, will I always be like this? As her one side of her face drooped. The doctor replied sadly, Yes, you will. Because the nerve was cut. I couldn't spare it and get all of the tumor. The woman nodded, but her young husband, buck up, Bill, you can tell this story without breaking down. The young husband chimed in, I like it. It's kind of cute. The doctor watched as he contorted his lips and kissed her to show her the kiss still worked. That husband understood Ruth. Life is full of challenges and difficult circumstances. And while we cannot control what happens in many instances in life, we can control our commitment to hold our family together. This is one of the lessons that Ruth teaches us in life. Lasting relationships are about commitment, serious commitment. And that's why at wedding ceremonies, ministers don't ask, do you love? What do we say? Will you love? It's about the future and honoring the words and the commitments that you make. And it's not just about marriage. I was raised and taught your word is your bond. If you say it, you should do it. And that's what real love involves, that kind of commitment to the other person's good welfare. May God add his blessing to his word. Oh, we're going to end the service differently. Usually you hear a song. But I thought this would speak to the younger folks in our audience and our place today. This is a contemporary speaker. So we'll need to make sure we have sound in the PowerPoint.